You're listening to Al Pastor, the show that helps you love God, love your neighbor, and eat more tacos. I'm your host, Pastor Brian. Welcome to the show. Well, hello. I want to welcome you to today's podcast. We're going to be covering Genesis 42, 17 through 38. It's going to be a great show. In studio with me again today is who?
Me, Noah.
Me, Noah. All right. Well, thank you for coming back on the show.
My pleasure.
Good. You know, here's what I was thinking. Since this is kind of a taco-related show, right? Since I'm Al Pastor, we need a name for you, something that has to do with tacos. So what would your name be?
Mr. Asada.
Mr. Asada? You know what? We could give it some thought, okay? So we could say, Al Pastor here, and you can say, hi, this is Mr. Asada. So give it some thought.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll get you we'll call it the podcast name. That'll be your podcast persona, right?
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
Sure.
Well, we are recording this on March 21st, 2023. And Noah, it happens to be your mom's birthday, which obviously you know.
Of course.
And we're going to go up here. We're actually doing this podcast really early. We normally do it at night. I do, and if Noah does it with me, we do it at night. So we're going to go up and have dinner with your mom this evening. I am
aware of that.
Are you excited?
Uh-huh.
I am too. So she's working today up at the college, and this is their fine dining night. So we're going to go up and enjoy some kind of dish. We'll figure out what it is. All right, let's get right into it. So, first question, Noah, is our reading from yesterday and on the podcast. I wanted you to figure out how long that trip was. Did you get any info on it?
I haven't actually had time to map it, but on the Genesis record, is that what you sent me?
Mm-hmm.
It was saying how to get back from Egypt back to Canaan. It was 250 miles.
So 250 miles. So what would that be round trip?
Like if you did 250 times
2, that would be the round trip. So what would that be?
500.
So 500 miles. And I think it also said, do you remember how many days it would take?
It says, I thought like 3 weeks, I think.
Okay. So yeah, that's a pretty significant journey. So this isn't like, hey, I'm going to go run down to Vallarta because we're out of some food, right? I mean, this is a big deal, big trip. All right. So let's get back into the story today. So we're going to start in verse 17. So it says he put them all together in custody for 3 days. By the way, if you're listening, we are reading out of the ESV today. Okay, so for 3 days, Noah, they are in prison.
In Egypt.
In Egypt. And do you think it might have been the same prison Joseph was in?
It could have been because Joseph was saying in today's reading, it was talking about with Pharaoh and how he would test him with Pharaoh, kind of.
Sure, but we don't know for sure. But it would be interesting, wouldn't it, if they're in the same prison? We can't prove it, but that would be interesting if they are experiencing what Joseph experienced. So verse 18, on the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. We're not going to get into that, but that phrase for I fear God is very, very loaded. Not that important for you personally, but for those of you at home, I would circle that and could be something worthy of studying out. So you know what I'm going to do, Noah, is there are 2 things in our reading today that I really, really want to bring out. The first one is, let's see if we can find it. The first one is the conversation they have while they are in jail. And I thought I marked this better. than what I did. There it is. Okay, so they're in jail. They have 3 days. What do you think they're doing?
Talking, trying to figure out, like, kind of like why are we here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like what do we do to deserve this? All that kind of stuff, right? So read verse 21 and 22 for us, please.
Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we see the distress of his soul when he begged us and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us."
So let's stop for a second. So now they're in jail, and now they're beginning to talk amongst themselves, and they're saying, don't you remember the distress? And here's the phrase that he uses in the ESV, the distress of his soul. Do you think when Joseph was in that pit, he was crying out like, help? What are you guys doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, kind of like, why are you guys eating up there while I'm down here?
Could be too. Probably cried out, probably screamed, probably cried, probably a lot of things. This is a very significant. So they are, first of all, they're recognizing what they did, and now they said, that is why this distress has come upon us. Now read verse 22.
And Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen to him. Did not listen. So now there comes reckoning for his blood."
Okay, so out of these 2 verses, this is giving us what we would call a summary of their discussion over 3 days. We don't have all the discussion, but you can imagine all the back and forth that they probably had. There is in this a sense of them recognizing that their sin has caught up with them. So what would be the lesson for us? And I'm going to tell you what this is. And for all of us, for you, Noah, personally, and for everybody that's listening at home, I hope we can get this and understand this. Unrepentant, unresolved sin will always catch up with us. So let's break that down. What does that mean? When we sin, we can ask God for forgiveness, and He is faithful and He is just to forgive us. Never forget that. He will always forgive us. Now, when your sin involves somebody else, it is important that there be restitution and reconciliation. And if you just say, you know what, God, please forgive me, and I'm just going to sweep all this under the rug. And let's say you went and you hurt somebody or you stole something, and you just say, okay, Lord, just forgive me. You know what God expects you to do if you stole something?
Return it and say your
Yes,
sorries. And all
that's
that.
called restitution. What happens if you hurt somebody? What are you supposed to do? You just say, okay, I hurt you. Lord, please forgive me. What are you supposed to do?
Help them back up if they're like injured or something. Help them say you're sorry.
Yeah. Yep. So here's the thing. It's been how many years?
13.
13 years. These brothers have been holding this secret inside of them. This has gone unresolved in their life. Not only have they hurt Joseph. Now, we can sit here and say, well, they don't have any way because they don't know where Joseph is. So how can they make this good, right? But what about their dad? Think about the agony that their father was in and is still in after all of these years. Did they go and confess and become honest with their father?
No, they end up sending people with his coat with the blood to him instead of actually going.
Now think about all the years that have passed. And so what happens, Noah, a lot of times in people's lives, and this can happen in our lives, so this is why we have to be careful, is our sins will catch up with us in the most inopportune times, meaning in the times that you don't want to deal with them. That's when you're going to have to deal with them. There may be a certain number of years where they were able to forget about this. Like, yeah, I remember Joseph. They were able to what we call suppress it. But because they never handled or dealt with this and did what they should have done, which would be confess to their father, go do what was right. Maybe they could have formed a search party, went to Egypt and say, you know what? There's 10 of us. Let's go find Joseph. Right? They could have done that. So now they're in prison. Now they are, this is what we call profound, Noah. They are in a jail and they are suffering. From their point of view, okay, we know the end of the story, but from their point of view, they're like, this could be the end of the road for us. We just have the most powerful man in Egypt that thinks we're spies. He put us in jail. We might not make it out of here. Because in Egypt, that's like death row. They'll kill you like that, like nothing. So think about what's going on in their hearts. The same, what's the phrase that it used here? It says, distress of the soul. The same distress of the soul is now happening to them. Now, Joseph is not doing this out of vengeance or trying to be spiteful. In fact, what Joseph is doing is being used by God to try to bring about in their lives repentance and restoration. It's incredible. Really incredible. Now, look what Reuben said. Reuben doesn't quite get it just yet. He says, didn't I tell you not to do this? In other words, what's he saying?
It's your guys' fault.
Exactly. So this is part of what we would say the illusion of sin, when we don't take responsibility and we try to blame others. And you know what? We become really, really good at this. All of us are. All of us are.
Well, but part of why he might be saying that is because he was hoping to get his firstborn inheritance back from his father.
That's true. That is very, very true. And there's some truth to this. Did he not say, let's not do this? But see, there's truth in it. So he says, now there comes a reckoning for his blood. In other words, what they're saying, Noah, is what's happening to us, we deserve it. This is, the world would say this is bad karma. But you know what? Karma doesn't work that way with God. There is a sense that we reap what we sow. However, God in his mercy and his grace gives us what we don't deserve. This is the beauty of the Bible, the beauty of the gospel message, is that when we are following God, we can be confident that when we're doing our best, God's doing his best. And even when we're not doing our best, God is still doing his best because he's working behind the scenes for them. They have no clue. Now, verse 24. It says, this is speaking, verse 23, they did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. So Joseph is able to, over these 3 days, hear the full story. He's able to hear their side of the story of what happened. They probably talked, here's Reuben blaming them, and Judah's probably saying, hey, we didn't want you to murder him. And they probably said, Simeon, it was all your fault. You wanted to. He heard everything. And then verse 24, it says, then he turned away from them and he wept. And he returned to them and he spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Now, we won't get into this, but the reason that he takes Simeon is most likely we have the two main characters of the story is Reuben and Judah, right? Reuben first wanted to get his inheritance back, so he said, let's throw him in the pit, and then I'll rescue him and return him to my father, and maybe he'll give me, just what you were saying earlier, give me my inheritance back, right? Judah's like, no, let's sell him. But you know what Simeon wanted to do?
Kill him?
Kill him. Simeon's the one that was in Shechem that went and murdered all of those city folks there for what happened with Dinah. So Simeon already has what we would call an established precedent, meaning he's done this before.
So even though he's his half brother, he wouldn't mind killing one more person.
Yeah, I mean, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. That's another lesson in itself. Once you Once you cross the line in certain areas of your life, it doesn't matter how big or how small, once you cross that line and cross over into what we would say blatant sin, the next time, so much easier. Like most people will struggle. Like, I know I shouldn't do that. I know I shouldn't do it. And you know what happens? They end up crossing the line. They commit whatever that sin is. And then they're like, well, nothing happened. God didn't strike me down with lightning. Or they'll say, I got away with it. And you know what? The next time, you're not going to have nearly as much struggle. And the Bible actually talks about this. There is a depiction. It is called the searing of your heart. And we won't get into that, but that's a great lesson. It's found in Romans chapter 1. There is a process that happens over time through sin. Anyway, so he takes Simeon and he bound him before their eyes. So there is
What do you mean bound him?
Like chained him, like said, bring him up here. Let's bind him, put him in chains and saying, all right, go ahead, guys, go back. And by the way, when you go back, don't come back unless you bring Benjamin.
So pretty much it is either Benjamin or Simeon.
Well, he's taking Simeon, number one, to try to ensure that they come back. Number two, Joseph knows, because Joseph knows from God that this famine is going to last 7 years, right? Nobody else, no, we don't have information. It's not like it was announced, hey, don't worry, guys, this is only going to last 7 years. As far as we know, this is between Joseph and Pharaoh. So from their perspective, they're coming down to get grain, but they don't know that grain's not going to last them very long. So Joseph knows they will have to come back. So he's making sure, he's ensuring it from that perspective, like, oh, they'll come back. And you know what? They're going to have to come back because when they get back home, they're going to run out of grain. And they remember like what he said. So first lesson out of this right here, number one, is we need to be careful with sin. Unrepentant, unreconciled, sin that's not been restored or restituted for. Not in the sense that you make up like, oh, I'm doing this so I can be forgiven. No, you do it because you are forgiven. Big difference. So let's use the example of stealing. Let's say you stole something. You're not forgiven because you returned it. That doesn't forgive you. Only God can forgive you. You're returning it because it's the right thing to do and because God has forgiven you. That's what it means to have restitution and reconciliation and resolution. So if you have unresolved sin and you've asked for forgiveness, there may be something God is wanting you to do. And this is what happens 13 years later. Their sin catches up with them. Okay, there's a lot of other things here in the story, but I'm going to go down to Jacob. So now, verse 36. And Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin? And now what's that last phrase, Noah?
All this has come against me.
So tell me in your own words, what is Jacob doing? Because now they've come home, and now they tell him what happened. And they're like, oh, by the way, Simeon's there, and they want us to bring Benjamin. So what is Jacob saying?
I think he's kind of like, it's like, he's like, what has he done for him to lose so far 2 sons and possibly 1 more?
Exactly. So in that phrase, he says, all of this has come against me. Is that positive? Is that negative? Like what else?
Like negative because he is feeling like the world is against him or something.
But what's the reality? That's the question.
It's not.
What? Keep going.
It's like this is part of God's main plan.
Okay. So he thinks from his perspective, he says everything is against me. But what's really happening?
I don't know.
God is working for him. So the lesson is sometimes in life, we can have the perception or the interpretation like, man, why is this happening to me? I can't believe this is happening. Why me, right? Like, why are these bad things happening? But in reality, God is working this out for Jacob's good, Joseph's good, the entire family's good. This is God's plan. But look at how Jacob sees it. So when we trust God, this is the message. When we trust him, we can trust him. And I'm going to pull up one scripture. Jacob, read that again, the highlighted part. In Genesis 42:36. What does he say?
All this has come against me.
And read it in the New King James. See it right here? What's it say?
All these things are against me.
Okay. I'm going to read you one verse. Okay, we're going to look at Romans 8:28. Read that verse.
And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose.
So what does Jacob say?
Everything is against him.
All these things are against me, right? That's what he said.
When really everything is actually working for him.
Yes. So Jacob doesn't understand this or appreciate it or know it at the moment, but this is a lesson for us. When things seem to be working against us, all things are doing what?
Working together for good.
Yes. What does that mean? Even if you can't see it,
The God's always working for something
yes.
good for you.
So what would we say? Could you give me one word that would encapsulate this or summarize this? What should we do in those times?
Repent.
That's always a good word. That's a good one. I would say trust, right? Lean not on your own understanding. Trust God. Trust God. It's a beautiful lesson. Do you have anything from our reading that you have questions on or that you want to discuss?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I mean, there is a lot in here, and for those of you that are listening at home, just want to encourage you. If you have something that you're wondering about, hey, let us know. Post it on Faith Life. Send a text. Send an email. Send a pigeon. All that good stuff. It's super interesting to me too about the whole money thing. He puts the money in there, and none of this is manipulative or vindictive on Joseph's part. Joseph has a heart for reconciliation. Joseph is obeying God and displaying the heart of God in everything that he's doing. And this process that Joseph is doing, don't interpret it as deception. He is working out the plan and the purpose of the Father for their good. And sometimes it is putting us in uncomfortable situations so that our eyes can be open to the reality or the gravity of the sin that we have gotten ourselves into. And when that happens, we appreciate much, much more the redemption and the restoration when it comes. And so we'll leave you with that. I bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to Al Pastor with Brian Overturf. If you found value in this, please subscribe and get updates most places podcasts are available. We're right here on Anchor FM through Spotify, also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. I hope you'll tune in for the next episode. Until then, we'll see you later.